guys, we all know and loved that TV show called The Office, but what happened to it? The Office was a documentary style comedy sitcom developed in 2005. The main character was the office manager called Michael Scott, and he was played by Steve Carell. The show ran for nine seasons, with 7 of them centered on Michael Scott, the office manager. So why did the show only last 2 more seasons after Michael Scott left? Here's why. Most of the time he wasn't actually trying to be funny. He was trying to act sophisticated, but it came out as ignorant and gibberish. Like after drinking wine, he would say, this wine has an oaky afterbirth. Or when he's performing CPR and he's told to pump at a pace of 100 beats per minute, but he says, how much is that per hour? And then he says, I will divide and count to it. Those statements don't make sense, but because he believes them, it comes out as humor. He also wants to be taken seriously and considered important in areas that he's not familiar with. For instance, he wanted to be the boat captain on a boat cruise and ends up making an announcement that the boat is sinking, and he causes one of the passengers to dive into the ocean. And because of that, Michael ends up being tied to the front of the ship. Or when he tried to drag Meredith into the rehab clinic, but he was told that patients are only admitted voluntarily. All these mishaps that he causes by trying to assume authority over situations that he has no experience with brings out humor because he actually believes that he's helping. Michael is also ignorant and offensive, but because he's genuinely curious, he doesn't realize he's being offensive and he doesn't know that he's ignorant. And this comes out as comedy because he's genuinely curious. Like when he tells Oscar, who's the gay employee in the office, that he's going for a colonoscopy, and he asks Oscar what he should expect in terms of sensation and emotion. Oscar, of course, is absolutely offended and is lost for words. All these things that Michael does make him such a funny character because he actually believes in what he's doing. Whether he's trying to be sophisticated, whether he's trying to be taken seriously, and whether he's genuinely curious. And because of this, all his actions and their consequences make him so believable and relatable as well. That's why the show carried on for 7 seasons centered on him. Now in season 7, Steve Carell, who played Michael Scott, left the show to spend more time with his children. Following the departure of Michael Scott, the new office manager became Andy Bernard, played by Ed Helms. The character Andy Bernard first showed up in season 3 of the show. Now Andy's personality clashed with every other character on the show. Whereas Michael Scott, the previous office manager, was small-minded and ignorant, he didn't do things to intentionally frustrate the other characters. Whereas Andy did. Andy was constantly singing, constantly used catchphrases that no one could relate to, like "riddy-did-do." He was constantly referring to people from his college days, like Buckley Rob. Andy also used to try so hard to impress everyone. Whereas Michael Scott constantly wanted to be taken seriously and earn people's respect. Whereas Michael Scott was trying to act sophisticated, Andy Bernard was a man-child, constantly seeking validation from his peers. It just looked too desperate and eager. Lastly, Andy Bernard had a lack of social awareness. Like in season 3 episode 13, Michael referred to Andy by saying, "He's always up in my business," which is Ebonics for being up in my face and annoying the bejesus out of me. And in season 4 episode 6, Andy was insisting on being in the book club that consisted of Pam, Oscar and Toby, and even refused to leave the room where they were having the meeting. Bottom line is, Andy was not a good choice to replace Michael as the office manager. Whether it's his desperate attempts to be liked by everyone, or his frustrating habits of singing all the time, or whether it's his man-child behavior, like using baby voices in the office, Andy's character was just not humor. It was not enough to replace Michael Scott as the office manager. What was meant to be an awkward style of comedy through situational circumstances that one would find themselves in by poor communication or poor decision making ended up being desperate comedy. It became goofy style comedy with characters doing intentionally humiliating stunts to find humor. In the final episodes of the show, Andy ends up taking a dump on his boss's car in order to get intentionally fired. So as expected, the show didn't last without an engaging lead character, Andy Bernard, and it lasted only 2 more seasons after Michael Scott left. Personally, I think a good replacement choice for office manager after Michael Scott left would have been Zach Galifianakis. Zach in his movies, just like Michael Scott, tries to act fancy and sophisticated, but it ends up falling apart. Zach, just like Michael Scott, tries to help out, but he ends up making the situation worse, just like Michael Scott. The characters that Zach usually plays are often ignorant but believe themselves to be in the right, making his actions and consequences convincing and unexpected. And most importantly, Zach isn't trying to be funny, he's trying to be taken seriously, but his mannerisms, his habits, his jokes are so misplaced that you have no other alternative but to laugh at the awkwardness, just as it was with Michael Scott. In summary, when they were looking to replace Michael Scott as office manager, they should have used an actor who could play a character that believed whatever they were doing was right, whether they were trying to act sophisticated, taken seriously, or trying to help out, but ultimately failed through sheer ignorance and not by intentionally acting goofy, like Andy Bernard. Please give a thumbs up if you like the video and if you agree that Zach Galifianakis could have replaced Michael Scott as office manager, or comment down below who you think would have been a good replacement for Michael Scott as office manager. Thanks guys.